Youorns. Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the YouOrns 10-minute take on Watford 1, Wigan Athletic 1. Watford did what they've done throughout the entire season in this game. This one game was a microcosm of the Watford season in earnest. Watford good in the first half, imposing their will on the game, bright, lively, passionate, playing good football, whipping in great crosses. And second half, nothing at all like the first. Watford in the second half of this game were well below par. Watford in the second half of this game did not bring the same energy and desperation, did not bring the same urgency to the game as it really needed. Watford fell into the familiar traps of what I call Jekyll and Watford football. And that has been the mantra all season long, at the Vic in particular, but also away from home. Watford started lively. They had much the better opportunities in the first half, and there were some gilt-edged chances that were missed by Watford players, no question about it. Keinan Davis missed one of them, a sitter literally from 4 yards out, heading the ball over the bar. Great crosses in from Jeremy Ngakia, great crosses in from Ken Sema, and also great crosses in by João Pedro. But all that went to pot in the second half of the game. And Keinan Davis in the first half, moments after he missed really what was a sitter in front of the Wigan goal at the Rookery end of the pitch, made amends with a really good, well-taken goal. He weaved in from the right side, waited for the Wigan defenders to move back, and then he zigged back into position and smashed the ball into the bottom right-hand corner of the Wigan net to give Watford the deserved 1-0 lead right on the stroke of half-time. There was 5 minutes of injury time in that first half. Wigan players flopping about like fish out of water, wasting time, doing the usual gamesmanship types of things that make a game very frustrating for the Watford fans watching it. But of course, everyone does the very same thing. Watford would have done the same, especially if they were away from home. So Wigan did what Preston do, what lots of away sides do when coming into the Vic, and that is to stop the game, slow it down, muck it up, waste time. That's what every away side does in the Championship. It's what every away side does in any level of football. And Watford have to learn how to deal with it. And they didn't in the second half. And they didn't pay attention to the script that says you are at your most vulnerable, especially after a 1-0 lead, when you go into the second half of the game and those first 10 minutes are the most vulnerable time for you as a football team on the pitch. Watford did not take heed of the memo. They didn't get the memo. And then, what do you know? In the first 10 minutes of the second half, Wigan struck really out of nothing. Now, Wigan did start to play better. You knew they would. Watford knew they would. And it's as if Watford just accepted that reality. Wigan came in with a really well-taken goal from the pantomime villain of pantomime villains, James McLean, who, with his team, 23rd out of 24th in the Championship, managed to conjure up something out of nothing. A great header that looped right above Daniel Batman. No way he could have got it right into the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner of the Watford net in front of the Rookery end. And that was the game, 1-1. Wigan grew in confidence from there. Watford slumped back, played too deep, and just did not conjure up enough. There were some chances for Watford, don't get me wrong, but Watford's finishing touches, well, where they were so strong on that in the first half, they weren't good enough in the second half. That final ball that really reached players or just eluded players in the first half did not come at all with any quality in the second. Watford reverted back to the game they played against Queen's Park Rangers. That was a week ago today with Chris Wilder's first game in charge. Watford didn't urgently press for that winner. They expected and waited for things to happen. And Watford, as a team, cannot expect to wait for things to happen. You have, well, a few of us, not me, a few of us believe playoffs are still on. I'm not one of them, as I say. But if you know that you've got a prize to try to go for, why would you hesitate? Why would you wait for something to happen on the pitch instead of making something happen on the pitch in that second half? Watford were very guilty of waiting for something to happen. And at home, especially at home, in front of your fans at the Vic, you cannot wait for something to happen. You have to make it happen. And because the players did not do enough to make things happen in that second half, that's why they got the result they got today. Not to take anything away from Wigan. Wigan played a lot better. Wigan caught Watford out on a 5-on-2 in the second half and were unfortunate not to score. If it wasn't for Wesley Hood with a couple of clearances, this could have been a very different game. You could have been talking about Wigan going back up to Lancashire with all 3 points. And yet Watford still had an opportunity to win this game, and they didn't get it done. They didn't get it done. That has been the familiar refrain throughout this season for Watford, particularly at Vicarage Road, dropping too many games at home, dropping 2 points at home on many occasions. And this is ultimately, their home pitch is ultimately going to be the downfall of Watford and why Watford don't make the playoffs this season. Besides the obvious inconsistencies, we know about those. But it's dropping these points at home that really have done Watford in. Whether it's the game against Sunderland at home, the game against Hull City at home, the game against Preston at home, the game against Rotherham at home, the game against Wigan at home, the game against Blackburn at home. Any questions? That's 7 wins. 7 wins they could have had. They'd be well in the playoffs right now. But Watford aren't getting there because the fundamentals of football in that second half weren't there either. Watford need to maintain the fundamentals of football. Watford in the second half of this game today against Wigan made the game too difficult for themselves. They didn't play simple football. And I don't mean stupid football when I say the word simple. I mean what I mean is the simple bread and butter things you have to do in football, the basics that a professional footballer should be doing. This lot weren't doing it. They were thinking too much on the pitch. And that's not a term I like to use. But Watford were thinking more than doing and reacting. And if Watford had been as proactive in that second half today as they were in the first, the 3 points would have been Watford's. Never mind the fact that Millwall lost at home to Huddersfield. Never mind the fact that Sunderland and that lot up the M1 played to a 1-1 draw. Never mind the fact that Norwich got a 0-0 draw today as well. This was the opportunity for Watford, for any of the Watford fans out there who still believed that Watford had an opportunity to make the playoffs. This game was that game. There's no way now that in these final 8 games, Watford are winning 6 of them. They've not won, to the best of my knowledge and memory, 3 consecutive games in a row all season long. What makes you think they're going to start to do that kind of thing now and win 6 out of the next 8? It's just not going to happen. This is going to be a lesson to this team. And maybe perhaps to the front office too. Maybe, maybe not. The question is, will whomever is here next season learn these lessons? Will whoever is managing this team next season understand that the fundamentals are the key? And I'm sure Chris Wilder at the moment understands that. But right now, this club has lost its bearings both off and on the pitch. And today, these players, when Wigan scored, didn't have that plan B. They didn't go back to the fundamentals of football. They didn't do the basics. They didn't go in and make the game simple. They didn't play the Route 1 football. They didn't play bombing the ball up and getting the crosses in. They didn't do any of that. They tried to be too much of a finesse team. And in the Championship, you don't need that kind of Premier League nonsense. You need to have the absolute bread and butter basics. That's what gets you over the line in football, especially in this business end of the season. You have to be able to go in meat and potatoes and get the job done. You don't have to finesse the game. You don't have to flair the game. Just go in there and put some old-fashioned crosses in like you did the first half. The confidence plays a big role, but passion and desire and energy and commitment for the 95 minutes plays the biggest role of all. Because if you don't have that energy and commitment and passion and desire, and I've said this many times, if you don't have that through the full 95 minutes plus, you're going to end up with results like the one you ended up with today. And we've seen that over and over again, especially at Vicarage Road. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.